I love costumes with cool hats. Hey, this is Svetlana from Cosplay, and today I'm going to show you how I make a really cool cowboy costume, pew pew, from Remnant 2. This is actually the second video. In the first video I showed you already how I made the merciless blaster with 250 LEDs and like sound effects, and it's completely made out of EVA foam. Looks really cool. Check out the video if you missed it. And yeah, this time I'm actually going to finish the whole costume. Remnant 2 is a Souls-like shooter which you can play solo or with two other friends. It plays in a post-apocalyptic world where you have to fight against like crazy creatures and like god-like demons, and like it's really cool. It looks really awesome. You can choose between different classes and they are all very stylish and fancy. And yeah, just check out the game in the video description down below. And as you know, I actually chose the Gunslinger because the Gunslinger has a really cool hat and a really cool style and a massive revolver, and yeah, just looks really cool. So in this video I'm going to show you how I make the whole costume completely from scratch. But since I actually moved to a tiny island in the middle of the ocean, getting materials here is a little bit difficult. So in this video you're actually going to see if I was able to find everything I need for the crafting process, or if the whole costume is actually made out of banana leaves. But now let's stop talking and start crafting. So let's start with the reference. As you can see, the Gunslinger looks really cool. The good thing is that he is mostly wearing normal clothes with some armor on top. It's basically just pants, a vest, a shirt, fancy cowboy boots, gloves, a poncho, a hat and a backpack. And all that stuff can be actually found online or in clothing stores. In addition, I didn't have much time for the costume, so some adjustments and a bit of armor on top should do the job. But first, it's shopping time. And this was the result of my haul. Yes, I know, it still looks a bit plain, but this was just the base anyway. Okay, now on to the adjustments. The blouse was plain white and clean. So first I grabbed some iodine poly, a dye for synthetic fibers, and cooked it with a lot of gray. Much better, right? And yes, I know the middle part is not very cowboy-like, but it will disappear under the vest later. To give it a more dirty and used look, Benny added some brown color with his airbrush. Looks already so much better, right? The vest got basically the same treatment. He just painted on some darker brown to all the seams and other areas where dirt could get stuck. Don't forget the pockets! Afterwards, I also added some muddy water spots on top. Dirty and disgusting vest, done! Now on to the pants. These were actually far too wide for me, so I pinned them together on one side and just sewed away a ton of material. As you can see, this made them thinner and thinner, but Benny kept on saying my pants are still too baggy. Then I added a rubber band for a nicer shape, and here are the new pants. Time to dye these as well. Much better, right? As you can see, it's totally fine to buy clothes or use some second-hand ones for cosplay as well. No need to make everything from scratch. Works especially good for post-apocalyptic outfits. For the belt, I made a rough pattern on my dress form, cut out some faux leather, added a ton of sewing clips, and sewed everything together. Yes, I could have made the belt functional, but I actually prefer Velcro. Same for the second one. Making a holster was very simple as well. It's really only about drawing the right kind of shape and using a good pleather. I actually found a really amazing faux leather store in my hometown, and it works super well for all the cosplay leather parts. As you can see, everything was fakey and a ton of fabric glue, but I still very much tried to stay close to my reference. And with some good looking 3D printed buckles, the right paint and more glue, everything came together really nicely. You might now wonder why I didn't use real leather, but I have a huge discomfort in wearing animal products and always avoid using them if possible. Benny meanwhile made me the last parts for the belt. He built this really cool buckle, sanded it a bit and gave it a simple but pretty convincing paint job. The attachment was quite easy as well. but the final result looked super awesome. As you can already guess though, the paint was still missing. Last 3D printed parts necessary were the spurs. It's a really small detail which nobody will notice, but Benni really wanted to do this part to complete the outfit. Looks pretty convincing, right? As always, I attached them using some faux leather belts, the boots got a nice dirty weathering, and my super fancy cowboy shoes were done. They look so cool. I was also quite lucky with the hat, as I had just to grab one from a previous costume. This lovely backpack here was also a part of my shopping haul, and with a bit of acrylics washing and weathering, it turned into the perfect post-apocalyptic survival equipment. Okay, enough with the fabric now. Let's craft some rusty armor. It's always a dream for every cosplayer when the developers provide us with 3D models from the game itself. Here you can see every detail of the outfit in separated parts, and Benni was even able to size them correctly on a 3D scan of my body. Most of the shapes obviously needed adjustments, but afterwards I got some sweet printed out foam patterns. Time to trace everything. As usual, I used 5mm high density EVA foam from Cosplay Shop.e, link in the video description. Tracing and cutting all parts is always a pretty boring step, but I was so excited to finally glue all parts together. Looks like a huge weird puzzle, right? But we have to trust the process. Next, I covered the edges with a thin layer of contact cement and connected everything piece by piece. Can you already see the pauldron? I got then 3 separate parts which needed some more glue and had to be stacked onto each other. For a more used and realistic look, I finally added some battle damage with my Dremel. And this was the foam build. So much better, right? First piece done. The rest worked pretty much the same. Here you actually see the breastplate. Using the Papakura technique with 3D models is an amazing way to get very accurate costume pieces. Building armor parts is super straightforward, and it's basically really just cutting and gluing foam together. And this was the finished base. Battle damage does such a huge difference though. So, next up the bracers. Let's speed up these parts a little bit, as you already saw all those steps previously. Again, all I did was cutting, puzzling, gluing, stacking and dremeling. See? Done. These were all my armor parts. Actually only spent 1 day to build these. Now onto the painting. For priming, I used a mix of flex bond and black acrylics. This saved quite some time and the armor became much more durable. After 2 layers, I dabbed on the last one to add a rough texture. It's a super easy trick, but really useful for armor and props. Try it out! Finally, it's time for Benni to shine again. He first covered all parts with a layer of silver airbrush colors. We actually paint most things at the same time, as it saves so much time. And now comes the magic. The next layer was a coat of hairspray. Again, onto all pieces. Afterwards, he added a darker silver on top. Why the hairspray? Patience, patience. First some brown for the rusty parts. And now back to the magic. With some warm water and a rough brush, Benni was now able to carefully scratch off the top coat again and reveal the silver layer underneath. This created a super convincing chipped paint look of old and worn metal. So cool. Works great with a metal sponge as well, by the way. Finally, Benni sealed his work with a layer of satin spray varnish. And now it was my turn again. I brushed on a mix of brown acrylics and texture paste to fake some rust. Looks pretty convincing, right? Once done on all parts, I actually didn't use any varnish on top to keep the fake rust looking matte. The result was a cool set of realistic looking armor. And all of that is just foam, primer and paint. Oh, and by the way, if you want to learn this stuff as well, check out my books on comiccosplay.com. I also have a book specifically on painting techniques. For the attachments, I made a few more faux leather belts. Hot gluing them onto foam doesn't work though. Instead, I used fabric glue to attach some 2mm foam, sewed it on, and then used contact cement to attach it onto the armor. Works so much better, trust me. Velcro did the rest. Same for the pauldron. Actually, I think the armor looks really sweet with the leather belts, and I'm happy that the devs included realistic armor attachments into their game. You might have noticed though that I actually forgot the poncho. This one had to fit over the armor, so I kept it for the end. And just like all the other clothing parts, the poncho needed a few adjustments here and there, and some button snaps for attachment. Looked already pretty good. Now it was missing some painted on stencils. I masked off some areas and basically dabbed on a bunch of white acrylics. Easy, right? The poncho had to look super old and worn out though, so I added more weathering and dirt in the end. Done. Okay, and now only the very last part of the costume, the revolver. Again, the lovely devs provided us with an amazing 3D model to work with. This truly feels like creating something directly from the game. Benni only had to do a few touch-ups and separated the file into 3D printing ready pieces. And the fun could begin. Our 3 printers ran for around 24 hours straight to print all these pieces. We used our resin printer mainly for the smaller and more fragile parts. They only needed a little bit of cleaning with water and alcohol, and they were ready for painting. The revolver is obviously not functional, but it definitely looked convincing. The FDM part still required some post-processing, but after that, it was time to glue all parts together with ABS slushy. This glue holds really well, you should try it out. The result looked already awesome, even without the paint job. Since Benni loves sanding so much though, he obviously had to make everything even more smoother. There is nothing better than getting completely covered in sanding dust. After all of that, I added a layer of dabbed-on flex bond for the texture, and Benni commenced with the painting. He used here the same hairspray technique, so let's speed up this step a bit again. Still pretty fascinating, right? Plus the result looked incredible. A last layer of satin spray varnish, some fabric strips to cover up the handle, and done. Looks really good, and I totally feel like a cowboy just holding it. And now let's finally put the whole costume on. If you don't know that this is all just paint, you probably wouldn't even dare to touch my stinky looking clothes, right? It actually all smelled like airbrush paint though. Getting into it all was really easy and straightforward. Plus it's super comfy. Only all the armor layers got a little bit hot, but it was still okay. And here is the result. I'm incredibly happy how everything turned out and really like the whole post-apocalyptic cowboy look. The Gunslinger is such a super cool class, and I'm so glad I was asked to create this costume. For the photoshoot, we found this absolutely amazing abandoned fish farm on Madeira. The only access road collapsed a few years ago, and all the equipment had to be left behind. This included an old truck and some larger machines, and they were all completely covered in rust. Like, not painted on rust, but actually real one. It fit perfectly to the world of Remnant II. Absolutely love these awesome photos Benni did. How do you like them? Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the whole video and like the final process and the costume and everything. And I really hope it helps you to recycle some of your old stuff and like turn it in a really cool costume. Or maybe it also helps you to avoid sewing, because sewing is not something people, like old people, enjoy. And you can just alter things until they look like a fancy cowboy costume. And yeah, as always, if you have any questions, please write me a comment down below. And if you don't have any questions, please just write down Corgi and join the Corgi squad and support us with the YouTube algorithm. Finally, also thanks a lot to Gearbox and Gunfire Games for this absolutely amazing collaboration. I'm really excited for Remnant II because it looks really cool and amazing. And if you want to check out the game, check out the link in the video description down below. And other than that, like and subscribe. hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. And see you very soon in the next video. Bye bye.